Welcome everybody to Prime Cuts number 23. It's Will Cooper here, and tonight on this Prime Cuts impromptu edition, I will talk about the Omnibus and the cigar language not making it onto the Omnibus bill, and I'll give some thoughts on that as well as some thoughts on today's decision around Reddit to ban cigar transactions. And this episode of Prime Cuts is sponsored by Lane Coffee. Lane Coffee is for those who actually care about what coffee they drink. Just like with cigars, there's quality versus quantity, and both have their place. But Lane Coffee believes in quality. Roasted fresh in individual batches using 100% specialty coffee from responsible sources. Visit www.lanecoffee.com to learn more. Well, as I mentioned, it's Will Cooper here. I am not in the Sereno Cigar Company studios. I'm still in my undisclosed location, and you can kind of use your imagination where I am. I'm in a tie today because this was not a scheduled Prime Cuts by any means, but there were a couple of stories that kind of broke throughout the day. Lucky I had some help in the home offices of Cigar Coop because I was literally tied up as these stories broke. But the first thing, I wanted to kind of just kick it off right off the bat is give some thoughts on today's. It was a disappointing decision for the cigar industry. And, I know we get optimistic sometimes, and it's good to get optimistic, but it was disappointing today to find out that the premium cigar exemption as well as the predicate date change did not make it onto the Omnibus bill. Now, I'm seeing people today walk around like it's the last day of summer vacation when they were in school. I know people are disappointed. Let me kind of just state this. If you've watched Primetime, if you've read Cigar Coop, you know that this was a long shot. Okay, it was a long shot, but it was a shot the industry had to take to try to get that language onto that bill. But it was a long shot, okay? And I'll kind of get to, I think there's bigger, there's things we can get more disappointed about. But let me just kind of take it through a little of what I've learned from this process is the legislative process. Our efforts, I think, have been a little bit problemsome in the legislative process because other things, it's a complex, it's like a web is what I'm seeing. It's like, and it gets very complicated out there. And often cigars have been lumped in with other things. And these other things have been things that are nothing to tie to cigars. But in this case of the spending bill, this is a spending bill that's going across. This is to fund all the government programs, and cigars are just a very small piece of that. But it was nonetheless disappointing because when the appropriations process starts, that's what's going to fund the government programs, and that's what's funding the FDA on top of the user fees in terms of how are they going to pay for basically coming up with these carrying out these regulations, and they decide where that funding is going to go to. Now we had some optimism in that in the House of Representatives it started out with the Agricultural Appropriations Bill. There was language for an exemption. There was language for a predicate date change for premium cigars, and it made it into the final House Appropriations Bill, and it passed through the House, which was a significant win. For in a way, it was a significant step forward. It was the first time any type of exemption had passed through the legislature, which again, if you look at this as a marathon, it was a good step. Now, everyone will tell you, we had Glenn Loop on Primetime Special Edition last year, and he was very cautious to say that he was very worried about the Senate, and he had good reason to worry about the Senate because the Senate had to have an appropriations bill, and that language didn't make it onto the Senate bill. So right then and there, the House and the Senate weren't in sync, and with those two things go. So they had to kind of come up with this reconciliation process. As such, all these appropriations bills started going into this big spending bill called the Omnibus. And the big question is, would those riders for the exemption and for the predicate date change make it onto the Omnibus? Now, there's a ton of, the government's dealing with a ton of stuff right now. Look, I would have loved for the fact that premium cigars would make it on there. I love premium cigars. It's an important thing to me. In the grand scheme of things, it was a complicated process that to kind of keep those on there. And in the end, it kind of got caught with some political shuffling going on. So other things were prioritized ahead of it. And I don't think this is a fault of anyone, as far as who's been kind of in Washington helping us there. I've heard some reports say that this was something that was stricken at the very end. Again, that's just reports. I can't say if that's true. That I've heard that, but part of me also wonders where that source came from. But Cigar Aficionado did report that earlier today. So as far as that goes, now I kind of in the last few days, especially in light of the whole great job that Rocky Patel did, I started seeing the petitions to Congress come back up on social media, and a lot of folks say, well, why aren't cigars that important? What can we do to make them more important? And those petitions are a communication mechanism to do it. And I suggested on the last Prime Cuts, as far as those petitions go, is I think it's great. Put the petition out on Facebook, get someone to sign it. But I think a better step with those petitions are, if you're a manufacturer, mandate your reps to get some signatures on there. I could set a quota for your reps to do it. If you're a retailer, get your employees in the store to get someone to sign that petition. And if you're a consumer, tell a friend and help them sign that petition. I think it needs to be a grassroots effort so we can get those numbers up. And there's strength in numbers, and the strength in numbers would tell the story when we get into this political football situation. And this ain't to point blame on anyone, but we need strength in numbers. Putting a link up on Facebook, yes, do it. I encourage you to do it. Thank you for doing it. But you're probably playing to the same audience who basically heard this story before. And we need to reach out to a bigger audience, branch out to the bigger audience. So it was a long shot. I think we knew it was a long shot. But there is some really strong, there's a couple of things that are happening right now that we have to look at. The lawsuit, the judge is probably going to rule on something with the lawsuit. And at the same time, the FDA reopening the rulemaking process for premium cigars. Both of those are tied together. And I think there's reason to have optimism with those cases right now, because the fact is they are for the first time going to be looking at premium cigars differently in the FDA, which is a positive. And hopefully the judge sees the light that if the FDA is changing everything, maybe he'll throw this lawsuit out. So I think there's some optimism there. And that will be something if I'll be quite disappointed if things just don't go that way. Like I said, the legislative effort I felt was a long shot. It was a shot the industry absolutely had to take that shot, though. So I think it was a very important thing to do there. But I think we have some good efforts there, and I think we at the same time, let's start asking the questions about strength and numbers there. Like I said, we all love having a petition out, but I think those petitions are a necessary evil. Are you tired? We're all tired of filling out petitions, but we have to do it. That's our mechanism to kind of get the message across there. So, obviously we'll see, there's some things that we have positive, and I think one thing I'll say is, we probably are in a better place now than we were a few years ago. A lot of work still to do is what this tells us. Anyway, Will Cooper here, an abbreviated Prime Cuts number 23. Just got done giving my thoughts on the Omnibus. I know we're upset or disappointed on that. The other thing that happened today, and this happened kind of around where I was around lunchtime today, is I started hearing this story about Reddit. Reddit basically banning tobacco transactions. And this idea of banning tobacco transactions, we went through this a couple years ago on Facebook, where Facebook has a policy where you can't sell tobacco online. And there was they targeted some of the Facebook groups a couple of years ago with that. And if you remember, everyone got in a panic that their Facebook group was going to get shut down, but there was a targeted effort with that. Now, today came word that Reddit was banning, as far as transactions go, all tobacco-related transactions. And those tobacco-related transactions are not just sales; they're trades. I guess you want to call it contests, gifts, whatever. They were completely banned, and which was a shock to a lot of people. Reddit is, for folks who don't know, it's a popular content sharing and social community. They have a very strong cigar presence. There's a few groups out there. or they call it subreddits, or the subs, and who do, and when there's a lot of content, I can see when Cigar Coop content's out there, we get a lot of traffic from Reddit, so they do a great job on there. But I don't think this was. I think there was some bigger things at play with this today. That I think. So if you kind of look at what Reddit banned, it wasn't just that they went after tobacco. They were going after firearms, ammunition, explosives, drugs, including alcohol and tobacco and controlled substances, stolen goods, paid services involving physical sexual contact. That's what was listed. Personal information and falsified official documents occurrences. So they're kind of going after these things. Now, I think the key thing is if you kind of look at the some of the things that they went after, you look at alcohol, tobacco, and firearms. We're all in there. Now, the timing of this is kind of interesting because this is coming on the aftermath of that kook in Austin, who Mark Anthony Condit, who was basically identified by the police as the prime suspect in those Austin, Texas bombings. So that nut job, he took his own life with an explosive device. Now, USA Today was reporting that hours before this kook took his life, there was someone claiming to be the bomber that actually took questions on Reddit. I think it Ask Me Anything. He was known as Austin Bomber. Now, no one knows if that was the same guy or not, right? But regardless, Reddit had to take action quickly. They removed the content and they banned this user quickly. You gotta wonder the timing of this versus the timing of what that report said. You kind of put it together, and unfortunately, I don't think this was a thing that was targeted with tobacco specific. I think there was other things at play with this. Unfortunately, we get lumped in with a lot of shit. Unfortunately, this is what happened here. Reddit still is in the end, it's still privately owned. But I think that's what was at play here. It's unfortunate that happened because, like I said, there was a strong Reddit cigar community out there from what I've seen. Now, they didn't ban cigars entirely. You could still talk about it. You could still post content. But I think from talking to a lot of people who are really into Reddit, the whole idea of trading, not necessarily selling stuff, but trading stuff, was gifting. Those types of things, the Secret Santas that were out there. Those were things I think that folks really enjoyed and made it on Reddit there. So I think there was some people like that. Now, what is this going to mean? It's going to mean eventually that when it comes to content sharing in the social media community, we're probably going to be looking at more private things that are going to be specifically geared at things like cigars. You look at what Cigar Dojo is doing right now. Obviously he's ahead of the game with that, in that he does own his own content there, and so I think we're going to start to see more of a trend with that right now. But regardless, this is these types of things are unfortunate that it happens. Like I said, I don't think this was something what Reddit was going after tobacco. I don't think, unfortunately, today's actions helped out as much. Anyway, Will Cooper here. It's kind of going to close out this, like I said, abbreviated prime cuts. And like I said, hold your head up high, guys, because I think there's some things we can look forward to. And I will see everybody. No primetime shows this week, but primetime will be back with special edition on Tuesday, our big baseball show with cigar industry people. And then next Thursday, I'll have Cigar Dojo as my special guest on the primetime show. As Aaron has the week off, but he'll be back the following week. So anyway, have a great night, everybody. Take care.